a minute ago. It was game day in 2013 before the SEC Network launched. I spent a year on game day, and we were in Athens, and SC had lost a game or two, and Chris Fowler asked me about what was Lane Kiffin's future, and I did this. I was prepared for it. I'd written it out. I was not going to take any chances. I went all in on Kiffin, saying that he would have never gotten the job without his father, Monty Kiffin. And I said when he's fired, which I would hope is immediately after he loses tonight's game, that SC will hire an adult to replace him, because he is the Miley Cyrus of college football. So that night, actually the next morning on the tarmac at LAX, guys, they fired Kiffin. And Kiffin and I happened to be together 2 weeks later. Game day was in Washington. Sarkisian was the coach at Washington. And Kiffin gave his first interview, and I looked over at about 4:30 a.m. Seattle time, and I walked over. I thought he was going to kill me, and we started laughing. We hit it off. He texted me the next day with some of his favorite Miley Cyrus songs, and we developed quite a relationship. And he later told me that that morning the president of SC and Pat Hayden, who's the AD, were watching game day out in Arizona. And when they saw my piece come up, the president turned to Hayden and he said, "If we lose tonight, I want you to fire his blank." And that's why he is convinced that I cost him a job, guys.
And who would have thought
Sounds like
all these years later that Lane Kiffin would still be in college football while the other two are fired from their jobs?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, there you go. You know what I love about that story, Paul, is that it shows that people are not so sensitive. You know, you're a guy who takes a lot of flack because you say things, you make strong statements, you criticize when you feel criticism is necessary, and people could hold a grudge on that. They could, oh, Paul Finebaum's the worst. But this is 2 days later, you became friends with the guy who you said should lose his job.
Yeah,
that speaks to me.
And listen, we spent a lot of time talking, and I think most people know that. And I'm glad to see him back. I'm truly glad, because he's a very good football coach. We're back. Great to have you on, and let's continue with more phone calls. And Al is in Memphis. You're on the air.
Hey, Paul, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm really well, thank you.
Good. 2 points I'd like to make is congratulations, Tigers, on whooping Georgia, and your thoughts on the Memphis coach leaving to go to Florida State.
Listen, I think it was a tough call, but I think he had done all he could do in Memphis. He left that place in great shape. He took over a really good program with Justin Fuente, and he made it better.
He did do that.
He did. Listen, I have friends who were at the game day event, and I'm sorry I couldn't get there, but that was one of the great moments in Memphis football history, and he's responsible for that. But the FSU job is not the job it used to be, but the potential that is there, and I don't blame him for taking it.
Well, I think he can probably do really well there. He may have, he'll go to a bowl game every year. I think he's got that potential of to get the kids to do that, and that maybe that's what all Florida State needs. I don't know. So.
Listen, nobody really does, but thanks for the call. Great to hear from you, Al. And let's continue with Jackson is up next. Hello, Jackson.
Hey there, Paul. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you.
Hey there. So you touched on it with Lane Kiffin. He didn't really say much about it, but I was just wondering what you think Ole Miss is going to do from an assistant coach standpoint when it comes to the defensive coordinator and the offensive coordinator. I saw that on Twitter, McIntyre is probably going to stay, but
yeah, I think Mac will stay. He's highly thought of and extremely respected. I've heard a lot of names, and I don't know. I mean, I've talked to Lane about this in the past, maybe a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week or two ago, but I don't know what's been going on. I mean, when you get a head coaching job like that, it is a whirlwind. And think about this: his agent is Jimmy Sexton, who also represents not only about 9 SEC head coaches, but probably a dozen or two or maybe more assistant coaches. So there's a constant churn, and I thought Kiffin was very smart with what he said today by using Saban as an example. There is no reason to rush into it. There's not much he can do to change the narrative on recruiting. Matt Luke had done a good job. He just needs to hold those recruits, and I think he will. and worry about the staff later. You don't have to hire your staff today. It is not necessary. Thanks for the call. Great to have you on. Aaron is in Missouri. Hello, Aaron.
Hey, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks a lot.
So I wanted to get your reaction to the Mizzou hire, Drinkwitz. I don't really know very much about him, except for he was at Appalachian State, and they did pretty well this year. But does this guy, can he recruit in the SEC?
Yeah, let me, I'll give you, we're going to talk to Gene Chizik later, who he worked for. Drinkwitz was the coach at Springdale High School, the same place that Gus Malzahn was the coach. He went to Auburn and understudied there under Chizik, and then later Malzahn. He may have gone to Arkansas State. I can't remember. But he's been at some good places. He's extremely young, but he is really well thought of. And I think even though he inherited Satterfield's team this year, he didn't miss a beat. They lost that one game, and they had a phenomenal season. So I think while it is certainly an interesting choice, a little bit outside the box, if you're Missouri, you want to shake things up. You've got a young, energetic coach. You juxtapose that with Barry Odom, who was just, he's a very good coach, very good coordinator, especially on the defensive side, but hardly somebody that was going to light a room up. Thank you for the call. Great to have you on. And Barbara is up next in Louisiana.
Hey, Paul.
Hey there, Barbara.
How you doing?
I am really well, thank you.
I just want you to know how much my husband, all of my sons love your show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that.
We come home and watch it every afternoon.
Well, that makes all of us feel great.
But I just wanted to say that I think that your red and white skirt is showing when you're talking about Clemson.
Really?
And I'm an LSU. Yeah.
I had sent that one to the cleaners. I can't believe you're making fun of that one.
Well, I thought I saw it showing, Paul.
Well,
that's all. That's the only.
You know what happens, Barbara? If I could just talk to you and no one else.
Okay.
I think sometimes you get into these feuds with people, and the one with Dabo has gone very public, as you probably know. And you just kind of push it, and sometimes you're saying things just for fun. I will tell you this, and I'm not backing away from anything I've said. I sat next to Dabo about a year and a half ago. I was the MC of a banquet in Birmingham that he was inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. We had a great time, and I think you heard him the other day talk about me in the sense that we really have no animosity. This is just pure TV entertainment right now. But one thing I will confirm, I will confirm I do not wear an Alabama skirt. I wear a crimson and white slip under my skirt.
Well, we just have one more thing to say. Go Tigers.
Well, I tell you what, Barbara. Now that we moved to the next phase, I don't have to hide my fanship for the LSU Tigers. I'm all in on Ed O and Joe Burrow.
Thank you, Paul. I know that means a lot to Louisiana.
Well, listen. I am not going to argue about where I'm a fan, even though I'm not. I don't live in I don't live in Alabama anymore. I'm not from Alabama. I have lived briefly in Louisiana. Listen, I was close to that program at Alabama for a long time, but I am as big a fan of Ed O and of the LSU Tigers as anyone right now. And I know everyone, I think, who's a fan of the SEC feels the very same way. Hey, thanks for the call. Lane Kiffin was with us. Coach Chiz later on, and more of your phone calls. Also, we'll dip into the new coach at Arkansas. Well, it's halftime time for Zim and Zim, there's a lot of news out there.
Yeah, Paul, we had 3 head coaches hired over the weekend, and also a lot of news involving assistant coaches and coordinators. Let's go to the headlines and check it out. We're going to start with South Carolina. The Gamecocks are expected to hire a familiar SEC name as new offensive coordinator. That name is former Georgia offensive coordinator Mike Bobo, who just stepped down after 5 years as Colorado State's head coach. Bobo has some close ties with Will Muschamp. The two are college teammates at Georgia. He steps in for Brian McClendon in that role. Speaking of offensive coordinators, Sources have told ESPN that Auburn will be looking for a new offensive coordinator. Florida State is going to hire Kenny Dillingham, who worked under new coach Mike Norvell back at Memphis. ESPN also reports that former Arkansas coach Chad Morris is a strong candidate to replace Dillingham. Morris and Malzahn also pretty close friends there. And some breaking news here within the last hour from Kentucky. Star quarterback, former receiver Lynn Bowden says he will enter the NFL draft. However, he will play in the Belk Bowl coming up later this month. A very dynamic player, the third leading rusher in the SEC. It will be interesting to see what position he ends up playing in the NFL.
Every position.
All of them. Finally, Oklahoma State coach Mike Gundy yesterday talking about his team's Texas Bowl matchup with A&M. He called the Aggies the best 7-5 team in the history of the NCAA. That goes back a long way.
Never heard that one.
Yeah, the Aggies have 5 losses against 3 number 1 teams, a number 4 team, and number 8 Auburn. That's a pretty strong statement, Paul. Do you think Gundy made a list of all the 7-5 teams that have ever played football?
You know, I think he's right. Although, do you really want to be known as the best 7-5 team in history?
I mean, yeah, you're the best something, I guess.
He would like them to be the best 7-6 team in history.
Mike Bobo at South Carolina, Paul?
Good
Interesting
hire. Yeah, very good
agreed.
hire. Will Muschamp needed something to maybe save his career there.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone has been wondering as we begin the second half of the show, who is Sam Pittman, the longtime offensive line coach, most recently at Georgia. He is being introduced right now in Fayetteville as the new head coach.
Hello, everybody. I'm honored to be here, honored to be the head football coach at the University of Arkansas. I want to thank Hunter for allowing that to happen and several others, along with Chancellor Steinmetz. The only way I know how to fix something is to go to work. And I believe that you can recruit, and in recruiting, you're going to have to recruit your team that you have now. You're going to have to recruit them to believe in what you're trying to get accomplished. You have to recruit the people that are going to come in to be part of the next team. You have to recruit coaches to come in. You know, since I got the job, I had over 400 or 500 text messages, and of those text messages, there's a lot of people in America that think about the Arkansas Razorbacks same way I do. And you might be shocked, you might not, to see some of the coaches that want to come here and be a part of Arkansas football and where they're at right now, and not unemployed, but great programs around the country. I've kind of always felt that way about Arkansas ever since I was a kid. And I want to tell you something. You guys were really good to me when I was here last time. You let me take my shoes off when I wanted to. Sometimes I'd take my socks off too, but y'all didn't seem to mind. You was good to me. I understand you're going to report like you need to report. I understand that too. But I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to hire a good football staff. We're trying to get them in as fast as we can. But to say I'm proud to be the head coach at Arkansas is an understatement. So with that said, I figure y'all ask some questions for me.
Hey, Sam, Tom Murphy, Arkansas Democrat Gazette. You spoke in the room over there a little bit about style, but what can you say about the offensive philosophy you want to run? And we know you can recruit the big guys, but you got Traylon Burks, Trey Knox, pretty boys. How are those guys going to operate this year?
Well, you know, if you look at the RPO game with the ability for your quarterback to run and or throw, you know, nowadays, if you get big, if you're going 12 plus, you go 12, 22, 21 plus, in this league, you better have the real deal now, because they're going to have guys with 320, 330 pounds on the other side. So I'm not telling you that the philosophy has gone to spread, because that's a lie. But I think you do have to have an edge covered. But I don't think you can just turn around down and hand the ball off to the tailback and say, hey, let's go sick them. You might be able to do it in the third and fourth quarter. But so what we want is we want to be versatile. I love the RPO game. I like the quarterback read game. And I like 11, which one tight end, 3 wideouts. And I like to throw the flash screens and different things of that is into the RPO system. Again, when I was here the first time at Arkansas, we played bully ball. And it worked for us at times, and sometimes it didn't. It's like football. I think there's a time to bully people as well, but you better have the guys or you're going to try to bully somebody. So right now, it'd be more of a pin and pull, more of an RPO system, things where we can get angles in blocking and edges as fast as we can with either read style or pulling linemen to get out there.
Yeah, Pete Roulier, hogsports.com. I was just wondering if you had a chance to maybe watch film yet, and then what's your overall thoughts of what the roster that you've been left with?
Well, I watch film because at Georgia we would play, teams that Arkansas would play as well. So you'd see, obviously I coached the offensive line, so I'd see Arkansas's offense, and they have some. I thought we have some good skill players, and we've got overall talent. I think we're just going to have to get a little bit bigger, and but there was games like the Texas A&M game where I thought we looked pretty good. So we need to get that team out there a little bit more often and continue to work on adding to our football team. But yeah, I did see them. I did see our team, and they're like any team. Sometimes they look a little bit better than others, just like Georgia did. I don't think we looked very good at it against LSU either. So I don't know a whole lot about our football team personnel-wise, to be honest with you, other than that.
Coach Trey Biddy with hogsports.com. Welcome back, first of all.
Thank you.
So could you go into a little bit more about how this happened? Did you reach out? Did Hunter reach out to you? I know that there were some players that wrote a letter also. How did this come together?
Well, I didn't know Hunter, and if I'd had his phone number, I'd just called him. But nobody'd give it to me, so. No, I didn't know him, and I figured that I knew a lot of people here, and so I tried to get people to him. And then Judy Henry, my agent out of Little Rock, she tried to get to Hunter, and then the process just happened through Sunday. It was that simple. And then had an interview and talked before, and I don't know. I convinced him. It was awesome.
Hey, Coach, congrats. JB92 won the ticket. How are you?
Thank you.
So, biggest question for me, I guess, would be, you talked a little bit there a few minutes ago about watching the program struggle and keeping an eye on it. And obviously that was, I'm sure, emotional for you from afar. What are a couple of the biggest things you think you can do right away to get the momentum going for this program again?
We can breathe confidence, belief, work ethic from us as a staff, communication to our players. And you ever seen a program that was was pretty good, not too bad. And then they started listening to Twitter or looking at Twitter and listening to TV, and the next day you know they go like this. Same way we're recruiting. It's the same thing. Look, you can't be any good at anything if you don't believe you are. I mean, you can't. And we have to breathe life into – it's not that drastic, I don't mean that, but we have to hire a staff that believes in our players in the program. And then we all go out there and communicate to our players. And it's about hard work, it's about toughness, it's about all these things. But the number one thing we had to do is get our players to believe that we can go win as a group. And the only way that's going to happen is if we show them we believe in them. And hopefully last night we showed that to start with.
Coach Pittman, this is Otis from Hogville and Pig Trail Nation, man.
Yes, sir.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Talk about, I know you're up against it with the early signing period and recruiting stuff. When do you start the in-home visits, and just how much of a staff can you think you have in place by the weekend stuff?
You know, I talked to Hunter about some of those things too. I think we can get in a home as soon as tonight. But the other thing about that is the staff. I'm gonna have, I don't know how many, a few before the end of the week. It's more important to me that we try to get some of these kids that are committed to us, and then make sure that we're right on who we hire here. And we can get people right now. It's just, how do you know if they're the best if you're not talking to 2 or 3 of them to figure out who you really want to hire? It's not a deal where you're saying, oh, I'd like to have this old boy, and he turns you down to go to Panic City. That ain't – we just go to Plan 1 at the 1 AAA. It doesn't matter. We've got a good list of coaches. But right now I've been pretty busy, you know, other than having time to talk to them. And we were busy before Hunter, before the University of Arkansas gave me the job, very busy. And where people were off that week, we weren't. You know, we were getting ready for the SEC championship game. So I'm not going to tell you I'm behind by any stretch with the hiring of the staff, but I'm pretty cautious because I know after Saturday it goes dead again.
Sam, Nate Allen, the Nate Allen Sports Service.
Yes, sir.
And I was wondering if you've talked to Barry Lunny and kind of what his future would be with your staff, and also if you talked like to the strength coach staff, and what do you plan to do about it?
I heard the first part.
And the strength coach, do you plan to bring in your own, or what's your plan on that?
Well, I haven't talked to the strength coach yet, and so I don't want to comment any further on that one. And I would prefer that you maybe talk to Barry about what his feelings are. Barry and I are really good friends and have been for a long time. I have high respect for him as a man and as a football coach.
Hey, Sam, Bob Holt, Arkansas Democrat Gazette. You can take your shoes off if you want to, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Hey, you've been an offensive line coach, a great offensive line coach for a long time, but it's not often that offensive line coaches get head coaching jobs in the SEC. Were you wondering if this opportunity would ever come? How long have you wanted to be a head coach, and to get it here? I mean, what does that mean to you?
I will say, I like that question, by the way. Again, it's kind of amazing to me that all us old line coaches kind of hang together, you know. So when I got the job, I had a bunch of those 500 texts were from guys in the Big 12, guys in the SEC saying, finally, one of us broke through to get a head coaching job. And they were so excited about it. When did I the head coaching part of it?
So we have been watching Sam Pittman be introduced as the new Arkansas head coach, the former offensive line coach at the University of Georgia. Well, we'll certainly get your reaction to his introductory press conference and more guests right here after this. We heard from Coach Pittman being introduced, and we'll get the reaction of the public, of course. Let me get your reaction to you guys. What'd you see and hear?
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to run through a wall.
I don't know about that. I'm not sure if you're serious there, Mark.
No, listen. You come off of these dynamic personalities
Right.
like Lane Kiffin, and you have some other people. Different people have different strategies on coaching
Sure.
and press conferences and everything. And this
Sure.
is an offensive line coach who probably hasn't gotten a lot of press
Right.
to begin with. A lot of people asking questions.
Sure, you
So
never know how
to be
someone
thrown
feels
in
up
there in your first press conference, it's I'm sure people were looking for the dynamic, loud. Maybe that's not his style. It's not his style, but doesn't mean he's not going to win games at Arkansas. So.
Right.
Paul, what were your guys' impressions?
Most fans would rather you win the games, not the press conference, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you saw was night and day here with Lane Kiffin and Sam Pittman. And it doesn't mean he won't be successful. What it does mean is that in the very narrow window that he has between now and next Tuesday, he's probably not going to fire anyone up.
Right. I heard this guy, most of what I knew about Sam from reading about him once he got the job was that he was a great recruiter and a knockdown, ace recruiter, can sell anybody. So I didn't necessarily get the sales pitch from that press conference. That doesn't mean he's not giving it in Holmes, obviously, this next couple of weeks.
Listen, you've heard me say a couple of times I'd like to talk to him first.
Right.
Hopefully maybe tomorrow we can
let's
talk
get him
to
on the show.
Right.
I am reluctant to say too much based on a press conference. There's some things that I didn't understand, but I think maybe has Hunter Yurachek talked yet? I think
he spoke earlier.
He did an introductory
stuff.
stuff.
He did a little intro discussion on that. So.
I think you're right, though. Let's reserve judgment till we can talk to him.
Yeah, I think sometimes I've heard guys like that at press conferences, and they're not talkative people, and then maybe on a one-on-one. We can break it down a little bit more. By the way, Butch Jones continued to be speculation that he could be the next Colorado State coach. Welcome back. Glad you're here. Any reaction to some of the new coaching hires? We'll get your reaction to that. And Brian is in Florida. Brian, go right ahead.
Finebaum.
Hey there.
How are you, sir?
I am well. Thank you.
Thanks for taking my call. I grew up in the muck, in the Glades and Belglade, and there's no other state that's ever had any rivalry like the state of Florida with our three teams. But that's my statement. My question for you is, what do you think the best hire is for any of the college teams today? Norvell won the presser, so I'm a no. But
listen,
you tell me who won.
I think Norvell is probably Norvell and Kiffin are the ones I would stop with. And Norvell really is an impressive coach. I've been around him a couple of times. We've had him here. I like everything that I hear. I'm not trying to. I'm not saying he's in the PJ Fleck mode, because PJ is a dynamic personality. Norvell has just got it all. And I think he'll do really well there. Willie Taggart, I think maybe was a little too much glitz and not enough substance.
So I'll say this. My father was fortunate enough to take with his career to end up in Memphis, and I graduated from Germantown in 1990.
Sure.
So you being you know Germantown, right?
I sure do.
Okay, Christian Brothers and all that.
Yeah, I went to high school in Germantown.
Yes, sir. So I know he's from Texas, but those Memphis roots, I think it fits well with it in Tally.
Listen, I have liked him for a while, and one thing about Norvell, it wasn't easy replacing Justin Fuente. He was the hot coach 4 years ago. Everyone wanted him, and Virginia Tech got him, and it was a seamless transition. And maybe because I'm from there, Brian, I just know how difficult it is for sustainability in a market that is a basketball school. Let's be honest. Memphis has always
Sure.
been about basketball. Football was an afterthought.
I remember those days.
I mean, and that's so unique. I mean, you have a basketball school in the middle of the South, in a city that touches Mississippi and Arkansas. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the call. Great to have you on. Chip is in Tennessee, and you are next up. Hey, Chip.
Hey, Paul. How are you, sir?
We are well. Thank you.
Just wanted to call and kind of talk about the Lane Kiffin deal. I think it was a great hire, and I'm very optimistic. But I also think he's going to be under a lot of pressure because if he doesn't do something in the next 4 years, I'm scared the fan base will bail out even worse than it already has. What do you think about
well, listen,
that?
Let's start in Mississippi, Chip. Okay.
Sure.
I mean, I talked to someone the other day in Atlanta that's connected to Mississippi State, and I said, would Joe Moorhead have survived had State lost the Egg Bowl? You know the answer. No. He was going to get fired. So let's start right there. The most important thing in Mississippi is winning the state and winning the Egg Bowl. So you compare Joe Moorhead with Lane Kiffin. I don't need to answer the question. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy answer. So where else can he gain ground? Is he going to be able to compete in Arkansas, a neighboring state, against Sam Pittman? We just saw we saw the two together. Louisiana, Lane and Ed Ogeron are, by the way, are very close friends.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand that Ogeron told him not to take the job at Ole Miss.
I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, I think Lane had to take the job. And it's all about timing. He won a tie. I mean, last year when Lane had a bad year, he went off the radar screen. And he was back on the radar screen then this year with a big win in the during the regular season and the bowl. I think he had to go. He has to establish himself because let me flip the coin for you for a second, okay? I understand your concern, but what if Lane Kiffin is successful? How hot does he then become?
It's like you said earlier. He beats Alabama, and he's the king, and we build statues.
Well, not only does he beat Alabama, he's the king. But what school is suddenly interested in him, or how many schools are suddenly interested in him? I mean, somebody had to take a chance. I mean, I know athletic directors that would not hire Lane Kiffin because of his reputation. But listen, I mean, and you know Ole Miss better than I do. I don't think this was a slam dunk. I mean, we both know there were some pretty important people that didn't want Lane Kiffin hired.
Sure. I understand that. Well, thank you for your insight. I appreciate it. And I'll call you back when I get a chance.
Chip, thank you. Listen, I don't think if you're Ole Miss you can say, well, what if it doesn't work out? You got to roll the dice. I mean, he's replacing Hugh Freeze, and let's be honest, he's not replacing Matt Luke. Matt Luke was a placeholder. Had he been a little more successful, he could have continued his career there. But unfortunately, Matt Luke is a great assistant coach. He just did not materialize very well as a head coach. Let's take a break. More to come. More after this. Welcome back to the program. Why Michigan? Why Alabama and Nick Saban could dread playing Michigan football in the Citrus Bowl. Reiner Saban, no kin, will join us momentarily. This is the ultimate blue bloods in college football here. I remember that game in 2000. Mike Dubose was the coach, Tom Brady. Alabama missed an extra point, I believe, in overtime, if my memory is correct, from 19 years ago being there. Michigan has not fared well against top teams. They've met a couple of times in bowl games. I think I've been to every one of these Michigan and Alabama games. And they've always been interesting, guys.
So much.
I think I'll be at this one too.
This is what everybody keeps talking about. Like, hey, we get something here. What are we going to get from Alabama? Are they going to be excited to be there? Mac Jones, which players are going pro, which ones are going to play. On one side, on the other side, you have Harbaugh, who, if he loses, it's just another notch.
What if Harbaugh loses badly, like he did last year to Dan Mullen?
And to Ohio State?
It's kind of water finding its level at that point. You just got to have to accept that's who he is.
You just say, okay, we can't beat Ohio State. We obviously can't beat Alabama or anybody good. Or anybody from the SEC other than Jim McElwain.
Right. The more interesting is the flip side of that, is if they actually win, and then it's like Harbaugh can stake his claim for being on that level. That
I'm not listening to this.
What would honestly, Paul? What would happen if Harbaugh and Michigan beat Nick Saban? And well, listen, I don't care what anybody says.
He's
it's
not
a bowl
listening.
game.
He already said he's not.
Paul,
listening.
you have to listen. I want to know what everybody's going to say.
Listen,
what's the narrative?
I'm a believer in positive thinking. So I can't imagine Jim Harbaugh. I mean, Jim Harbaugh beating Nick Saban,
right?
The GOAT.
Well, one thing that's changed, Paul, since that 2000 meeting, besides the material status of you, me, and Kubiak over the last 19 years, is that players are much more common to sit out of bowl games this day and age than they were 20 years ago if they feel they've got other future. So Bama guys, are they going to be motivated? I don't know.
Why,
They're not in the CFP.
Let's be honest. Why would they be motivated?
They're going to have to depend on their coach, who
they don't
will be
care.
very motivated.
Michigan doesn't mean anything to them. I mean, Michigan's a loser compared to them. You know, when they think about LSU and Georgia.
Right, but
Auburn.
they're playing them in a bowl game. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, but at the same time, you look across the field, you're in that same boat.
2013 is the last time Alabama did not play in the college football playoff.
And they lost.
They laid an egg to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just saying, this would be Harbaugh's biggest win.
Right.
In Michigan.
Sounds like you're not having any.
You know, I never thought about that. I mean, Harbaugh has been given like one more chance. Man. Okay, we're back. Reiner Saban, good friend of ours, used to work in Alabama covering the Crimson Tide. Now he's gone to the dark side up there in Detroit. Reiner, great to have you back. How's life up in Michigan?
It's good. It's different, much colder. First time I've been up in the north in 20-some-odd years, so it's been an adjustment.
Okay, well, we kept thinking about this game. It's certainly the most attractive non-playoff game, and what's been the reaction up there in the land of the Go Big Blue?
Well, I think that they see this as there's dread because it's Alabama, and what happened to Ohio State is obviously in their kind of collective consciousness, and so they see Alabama in the same light, but at the same time they see it as an opportunity to get a win and finish off the season again with 10 victories. So I think I think they look at it from a very mixed perspective, but it's also because of the stakes of the bowl game have been reduced, obviously in light of the playoff, and in general, I think that the Michigan and Alabama thing still resonates, but it just doesn't resonate to the same level as it would have if it was the previous bowl system.
Yeah, I mean, last year it was a different set of circumstances. Michigan lost to Ohio State and pretty much knocked them out of everything. I mean, this year Michigan really wasn't going anywhere.
Sure.
So it's but yeah, I mean, in terms of losing this game, probably not going to be a shock. But I mean, wouldn't you say there's more upside than downside?
Oh, for Michigan, absolutely. I mean, Michigan has everything to gain, really nothing to lose, whereas Alabama, they really don't have anything to gain, and I don't think they have much to lose either. But, perception-wise, I guess Jim Harbaugh could try to sell it as something of a major victory for his program and use it on the recruiting trail. But, I mean, I don't know what kind of recruit is really going to make their evaluation off of the Citrus Bowl. And I don't know if you'd want to sign a player like that anyway, if they were making a determination based off of the result of a meaningless bowl game.
Reiner, you covered Alabama for a couple of years, so let me ask you what your observations are of that program, knowing the intricacies of the Crimson Tide, and just before we get back to the Michigan game, just from a distance, what's it look like to you?
With Alabama, I mean, I think it's the defense obviously took a major step back. I do think that was a byproduct of the injuries and such. I mean, the inside linebackers are very, very important to that defense, just for what they do and how they coordinate everything from the pass coverage standpoint and doing the run fits and all that kind of stuff on the defensive side, and so I think that was a major blow to the team was losing Josh McMillan and Dylan Moses, in training camp essentially, and so it's that really kind of set them off, on the wrong foot, and then obviously everything kind of hinges on Tua, and Saban had been kind of trending towards this direction where the offense took more or became more powerful than the defense. If Alabama had the generational defense that it had in 2016 mixed with the offense and even with Mac Jones at quarterback, I think that team's in the playoff. But, considering what they lost on defense early in the season, combined with the injury to Tua, I just think it was too much to overcome. But I don't think you can make any kind of definitive statements about where the program is. I think they might take a step back a little bit next year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're back in, the CFP in 2021.
No, hey, come on. Alabama doesn't take off a year from the CFP, do they?
Well, I guess they did this year.
Well, that was inadvertent.
Yeah, true. But I think next year the schedule is, pretty tough. They got USC, Georgia, although I think Georgia may, fall off too a little bit in the sense that, especially this loss of Sam Pittman, I think that was actually a pretty big loss for that program. He was really good at recruiting the offensive line. That was the basis of everything in Georgia offensively. So I think that there's going to be some challenges from a schedule standpoint with Alabama next year that they didn't face this year. And so I think that could kind of affect them adversely next season.
Let me ask you, Reiner, about the Michigan mindset, because I've tried to understand it. I was talking to Jalen Rose the other day, and one of the most famous Michigan men of all time just failed miserably explaining to me how the Wolverine fan base can watch what has happened year after year against Ohio State and be moderately satisfied. Now that you're up there luxuriating in all the greatness that is the University of Michigan, what is it?
There is a level of exceptionalism that Michigan kind of clings to, and it's very strange. I think the program can't get past the idea that it was once, obviously very powerful in the first part of the 20th century, and kind of was the preeminent college football program back then. And they really haven't moved on from that. One thing I found very fascinating is the idolization of Bo Schembechler. Schembechler never won a national championship. He really wasn't a Michigan man in the traditional sense. He went to school in Miami of Ohio. It's not the same thing with Bear Bryant. I saw that at Alabama. But Bear Bryant won 6 national titles and, went to school at Alabama. So it is a very strange thing. They've got a lot of contradictions at play, but they do cling to this exceptionalism that kind of governs their whole mindset about what they are and the leaders and the best and all that kind of jazz. And I think that kind of permeates the entire program and the mindset there.
Would anything change, Reiner, if Alabama just takes them apart like Florida did last year?
No, people will be grumbling about it, and then, the expectations will start up again, and it happens every year with Michigan. They take a hit late in the season, and then it's like it never happened, and then they're back in the, kind of top 10 or top 15 in the preseason polls, and big expectations, and can they win the Big Ten, and it's just the same thing gets repeated, every year, and so I think that will just be the case again this year. I don't see it any different.
Do you give credence, Reiner, before you go, to any of the pop-up stories that link Jim Harbaugh to what will be a myriad of NFL openings here, beginning already with 1 or 2 and probably expanding to double digits here in 2 weeks?
I don't in some ways. I wrote a story about this. I think some of Jim Harbaugh's value has been reduced as far as, whether he'd be successful in the NFL in this day and age, because if you think about it, the NFL is trying to pull coaches from the college game to take, college schemes and apply them to the NFL now. I mean, you see that with Cliff Kingsbury and such. And so Harbaugh comes from the exact opposite. He's a pro-style, traditional offensive coach and had to hire a college, coach with college schemes with Josh Gaddis to run the offense this year. So what value does he really bring, except from maybe an organizational standpoint? And I just don't think he's really a CEO-type coach. I think he wants to be a little bit more involved in things. And I just don't know if he has as much value in today's NFL as he did maybe, 5-10 years ago.
Before you go, Ryan, I'm fascinated by covering Harbaugh versus Saban.
Sure.
What are the likenesses and differences?
Well, I mean, I think, they come from a similar philosophical standpoint of how to win football games. But, Saban in dealing with the media is a lot more, strangely enough, forthcoming. Like, he'll shred you if he doesn't like the question, but then he'll give you a thoughtful response. Whereas Harbaugh, if he doesn't like the question, he'll just shut down and not answer it and avoid it altogether. And I think it's interesting having covered both of them because, people are like, oh, you've covered Saban, that he must be the toughest guy to, deal with. I actually like dealing with Saban because, again, he gave you thoughtful responses. He might not like the question and he might, criticize you personally, but you don't really take it personally because he's not really taking a shot at you. He's just taking a shot at, in general, not liking the question. And so, whereas Harbaugh, he won't even give you a decent response sometimes. And so it's funny. I actually think Saban's a little bit easier to deal with than Harbaugh.
Wow. That's, something tells me that Bill Belichick is in your future down the road.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one to deal with. Although I'd be a little bit more prepared coming from the Saban.
So final question: your story, the headlines: why Alabama should dread playing in this game? I forgot to ask you the most important question: why?
Well, I just think again, Saban's talked about this. He talked about it 3 years ago. How the CFP has eliminated the stakes of bowl games, and he worried about this idea that players would be sitting out of games because there was no consequence to them. And, Alabama generally produces, 8 to 10 NFL draftable players each year. And so, he was going to face this at some point if he didn't make the CFP, and sure enough, he is now. And so he has to figure out how to, get a team together in less than a month's time that maybe look different than, the team that he had earlier this season when it was at full strength. So I think it's going to be, a little bit of a challenge for him that he hasn't faced before.
Reiner, great to connect again. We will see you down at the bowl game. Thanks for being on.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Great to have you on. Reiner Saban used to cover the Crimson Tide. Now he covers the Michigan Wolverines. We've had quite a show. Kiffin, Andy Staples, Reiner. Still plenty of time for you. Oh, Gene Chiswick's coming up here in a few minutes as well. Let's take a break. More to come.